Good evening, viewers, and very welcome to our YouTube channel and tonight's extraordinary webcast. As most of you will already know, we normally only do one release per year, but this year is a little bit special and you are soon going to learn why. I will be accepting questions in this webcast. I will try to answer them towards the end of the webcast. However, please limit yourselves to questions related to what we are releasing tonight. We at Capture pride ourselves in having introduced to the market of lighting design software several innovations and new technologies. I'm going to go through a couple of examples. In the year 2005, we launched a new feature that was then called Demo. This is a feature that today is known as presentations. Presentations are, the concept is that you can export from Capture a sort of snapshot of your design that can then be run on another computer where you don't necessarily have Capture installed. So this way you can send your design ideas to someone else who can look at it in 3D. You can even send designs off for pre-visualization using Ethernet DMX. This feature is quite popular, and we improved on that in Capture 2020 when we made it cross-platform. So with Capture 2020, when you export a presentation, it will run on Mac as well as Windows, regardless of which platform you exported it from. In the year 2006, we pioneered the world of video streaming with the invention of CITP MSEX that we created together with Archaeos. This quickly became the video streaming standard, and that lasted for some 10 years. In 2017, we introduced support for NDI, again as the first visualizer on the market. NDI has gained a lot of traction since then. It's become really popular. But it's not just about isolated features or Ethernet protocols. It's also about platforms. When we launched Capture Polar in 2008, Capture became the first lighting design and visualization environment that ran on both Windows and Mac. And to date, Capture is still the only integrated lighting design and visualization software that does this. Now, in order to have a software that works on multiple platforms, you need to have had a thinking in place already. You need to have in your DNA to do this kind of stuff, basically. It's evident not only in our Windows and Mac software, but also if you analyze how the presentations work or how the Capture component works, which runs on lighting consoles. So, with this thinking in mind and our history, we are super excited to be announcing, excuse me, in the year 2020, Capture 2020 for iOS. iOS is the sibling operating system of Mac OS. It has a lot in common with Mac OS, in particular the rendering platform, which is Metal. Capture for iOS is a viewing and visualization solution for the iPhone and the iPad. And we're going to go straight into a demo. Now, I have a setup here with a camera rigged right on top of my iPad Pro. This is a first generation iPad Pro. And we're going to go straight into Capture, which I've got installed on my iPad. When we launch Capture, we go straight into a file browser where we can select a file to open. There are a number of ways you can get your files into your iOS device. You can email, you can download from the internet, you can use AirDrop. In my case, I've transferred the file using Dropbox, but I did copy it directly to my iPad because I did not want to be connected to the internet throughout the demo to spare you from awkward notifications. Anyhow, I'm going to tap the project file I have here and see what happens. Immediately, we get a top mode plot view of the project. The reason we get this is simply that this is the way it was saved. So very much like presentations, we open by default what you would have seen in the alpha view of your project file. I can now use a finger, tap and drag to scroll, and 2 fingers pinch to zoom in and out at any point of the design. At the top right corner, we have a button that opens a menu that is very similar to what we used in desktop capture. We have the regular options to switch between wireframe, plot live, and custom, but here we've added a few extras, and they are probably self-explanatory, but anyhow, we have the ability to choose between different filters. We can choose between different scenes. And if we've made multiple plot styles, we can switch between them here as well. Obviously, we also have access to the camera options with the regular choices of swinging top front section or jumping between different camera positions. Once in 3D, it's worth pointing out that using 2-finger drag, which I'm not always very good at all, we are able to rotate the camera. And that, of course, works in all of the modes when I get along with the touch screen. But perhaps the real party trick is, of course, the live mode. So as I mentioned, iOS uses Metal for rendering just as macOS does, which means our rendering engine can actually be run on an iPad or an iPhone. Now, if you paid attention, another thing that we added to the menu here is the ability to choose between snapshots. So if you have different snapshots in your design, you can jump between them in here. If you do not have any snapshots, or if you use the external option, which is the default, then you can actually receive DMX over the network using ArtNet, CITP, or streaming ACN. That means that you can do live visualization with Capture on your iPhone or iPad next to your lighting console or whatever source you have for DMX. So as I'm sure you can imagine, this is a super useful tool when you are on the road. You need to check something in your project file. If you have it stored on iCloud or Dropbox, you can open it anywhere you are. If you have the device next to your console, you can do pre-visualization, or you can bring it to a client to show off some snapshots that you have stored in the project file. So that's what I wanted to show you in the app. There are a few other topics worth covering, of course. So we are launching Capture for iOS today. It should be available in the App Store as of 9 minutes. There may be local time zone variations, but it should already be online. You can find it listed as Capture Mobile. The name Just Capture was already taken. It is free. It opens any Capture project file, the latest version, older version, as well as the student edition files. So if you do not own a Capture license and you want to take the iOS app for a spin, you can draw a design in the student edition and play with that. So as I mentioned, it is free. It does not cost anything. And this is our first release of a mobile app ever. So we don't have that good of an idea of what you might be interested in having in a mobile app. So we are super curious to hear your feedback about which features should go into the app. We have a relatively good idea of many things we would like to do already. And the ambition is to be updating the app at irregular intervals. So this is not necessarily tied to the regular release intervals of our desktop application. Of course, once Capture 2021 has been released, there will be an updated version in order to open those files and to benefit from technical advancements in Capture 2021. Another rather common question, I suppose, is whether we are going to be doing an Android version. And the answer to that is no, at least not in the near future. One of the main reasons, I suppose, that we could do an iOS version is that we already had a macOS version, and there is a great deal of similarity between the systems, but also that we can benefit from running our rendering engine on these devices because it gives us additional performance information that we can then use to tweak the performance of, well, all of our Capture products actually. So I think I've covered the things I wanted to talk about. So I'm going to turn Wi-Fi on my iPad next to me here to see whether possibly we have any questions here. It seems that we might not. So if you do have questions, please hurry up, write them, or I will not have time to answer them. I'm running tonight, I was running on my iPad Pro, first generation. All right, I'm seeing questions now. The requirement for the app is iOS 13. It runs on the iPhone as well as the iPad. There are no differences apart from, well, the way it looks. The iPhone is much smaller than the iPad, so when the menu appears, it uses more screen space. The newer and more powerful device you have, the more capable it will be in terms of visualization. Obviously, you might not be able to load the most heavy designs if you want to visualize. As for paperwork, it should work perfectly fine. So, Wiener222IS is asking whether MANet is available. The answer is no. MANet, the way we have access to MANet on Windows requires us to use a DLL from MA. There is no way we could run that on an iPad. So we can only hope that when MA bring new MA3 technology to the visualizers, they also keep in mind the mobile platforms. Stephen Gray is asking, how does that work with the license quota? The answer is it doesn't. This is a completely free viewer that opens any Capture project file. You do not need to own a license to run the app. It does not count towards your licenses in any way. It is completely free. You do, of course, require a Capture license to draw a project file or use the free Student Edition. Mark Lapierre writes, he's heard so much about the power of iPad chipsets. What kind of rendering capability can we expect? It's very hard to answer that in a good way. The best way is for you to try. We are quite impressed, especially by the latest chipset. It is really powerful. The fact that the CPU and GPU are on the same chip means there is potentially less communication that needs to happen to make things work. And when we started working on this project, we had genuine concern whether it was going to be useful at all. So it was very much a test in the beginning, but it quickly became clear that, yeah, there is quite a bit of horsepower in those devices. In fact, if you look at benchmarks, you may discover that the latest iPhones and iPads are more powerful than several laptops that only have a few years of age. Sharon, if I pronounce that right, is asking, can it connect to ArcNet? Yes, it connects to ArcNet, Streaming ACN, and CITP. And with CITP, I might mention that we support receiving DMX, and the Lighting console should be able to get live screenshots from Capture as well. So if you're recording palettes on a console that can grab screenshots, then you could have an iPhone or an iPad next to the console to generate simulated imagery for your palettes. But we do not exchange patch or anything like that, yet at least. Liam Mace is asking whether it works with the Apple Pencil. We have not done any specifics for the Pencil. In fact, I don't even think we've tried it, despite actually having pencils, so that's a good point. I don't know. Zachary is asking, will it connect to an internal network HE-HOG system and visualize in real time? And does it connect in an expected way? So you will be able to send DMX to Capture from a HOG using ArcNet or streaming ACN or using CITP connectivity. So that works fine. Normally, I guess you have your iPad or iPhone in an environment where you connect with Wi-Fi. So there is in fact only one IP address, so it's all pretty simple. If you do want, you could of course connect with an Ethernet adapter. Then I would suggest you turn Wi-Fi off and use that Ethernet adapter to connect wired to your network. Shouldn't be any issues really. It is in general much easier than on a desktop where you can do a lot of weird configuration that you simply can't do on iOS. Diane Tuchev is asking, is there any plan to collaborate with MA Lighting for free parameters for those who invest in Capture? So all of this really bounces back to MA and what they decide and do. MA have promised that they will be opening up DMX for visualization with MA3. So as far as we understand it, it is work in progress. We can only hope that it will also support mobile devices. Wiener222 is asking, can you use a dongle for Ethernet? Yes, there are lighting to Ethernet adapters available, so you can do that. You do not need to use Wi-Fi. Club Lights is asking, does it work with console link? Question mark AVO in parentheses. So to some extent, yes, in the sense that it will connect with the console and you will get DMX transferred, but it does not do patch transfer or focusing talkback. This is something we have discussed quite a bit. It's quite likely that we will be doing this at some point, especially if more people ask for it. And final question, unless we have more coming in, Paul Levkovitz is asking about MVR and GDTF compatibility, which is actually totally beside the point here. There is no relation with MVR or GDTF here. We've promised to do MVR for Capture 2021, but yeah, that's for desktop Capture. And Mark Lapierre is asking whether you can edit. No. So you cannot edit anything in the app at the moment, at least. This is something we might expand to doing in the future. But at the moment, it's purely a viewer and visualizer, very much like the presentations work on the desktop, actually, with a few added features. We have some early indications that it might not yet be available in the App Store. We did set a release date and time, and there was information from Apple that there may be local variations in app stores around the world for the actual release time. So hopefully, if you just check again in a moment, it should be there. Matthias is asking whether we have iCloud Sync. So in the sense that if you have your documents on iCloud, then when you open Capture and the file browser appears, iCloud is there as an option, so you can simply open any document you have on iCloud already. If we did allow you to edit and save something in the app, that would have saved and synchronized straight back to our iCloud, yes. Doesn't yet, but it could. And that should answer Hebe's question as well. What the integration is like with Dropbox and Google Drive. I have personally tried it with Dropbox and it works perfectly. I have not tried it with Google Drive, but I imagine it works well with Google Drive as well as Microsoft's OneDrive, I believe it's called as well. Stephen Gray is asking, how do you load the file onto the iPad? So you can email it to yourself, or you can, if you have the device connected to your computer, you could copy it that way. Personally, I would use iCloud or Dropbox or some file synchronization mechanism to do that. If you have a Mac, you could also use AirDrop to transfer the file. Anthony is asking, do you go about patching in the app? So no, you cannot patch in the app actually. You need to have prepared all the patch and everything in the environment where you're editing the file. That would be your Windows or Mac desktop computers. And it would seem that someone is also asking again about Android. I did mention this before. We do not have any plans for an Android app at the moment. Large part of the reason we could do the iOS app in the first place is because it is so similar to Mac OS. Otherwise, it would have been a very large development project. And I will be rounding off with the last question from Ethan B., who wonders where I got such a stylish polo, and the answer, that would be advertising, actually. No, I won't answer that. You shall have to forever wonder where I got my stylish polo. And bonus question at the end, what's the app called? The name of the app is Capture, but on the App Store you will need to search for Capture Mobile, because the name on the App Store can be different from the name of the actual app. Such is life. Thanks so much everyone for watching tonight. I hope that you have already or are already downloading the Capture app for iOS, and that you will have a lot of fun with it, and maybe in the future also find it useful when our world is what it should be again. And if you can, don't miss the webcasts from Germany tonight, where they are doing a manifestation, I suppose, for the lighting industry. A name which unfortunately just slipped my mind. But I'll post a link quite quickly in here, so you have something more exciting to watch once we're done here. Thanks very much, everyone, and hope to see you soon again. Good evening.